means that you are under 19 in the year of participation. So this coming year, you'll have a birth year of 2004 for U19, 2004 or above, like 2005, 2006. The selection camp is what is considered the pinnacle of the junior system, U19 system, and we have that selection camp out in Chula Vista, California, at the old Arco Olympic Training Center, which is now Chula Vista Elite Athlete Training System or Center, and that will include athletes from all U19, U18, but those athletes will be selected for a world championship team, first and foremost. And then second group of athletes will be the Canamex athletes. And then the third group out of selection camp is selection development. So in that, the select world team can be any age group, U19 or below. Canamex eligible athletes are U18, so 2005 birth years. Also, selection development is the same, U18 athletes, eligible athletes, so 2005 or younger. The system we select, so this year, like Chris mentioned, our season this summer is shortened quite a bit. So we're starting the selection event or Chula Vista selection camp a week prior to what we typically do. So we are going to start June 13th, and we do it in phases, but phase 1 of selection is a 3-week period, which we will have a week of running through the paces of expectations and technical terms, communicating, trying to learn each other's language to make sure that the communication is clear of what we're looking for, and hoping that the athletes are what we consider flexible, right? We're looking for flexibility more so than if an athlete comes from a program that does X and they're not willing to be flexible to meld in with the rest of the group, selection's not going to go too well for that athlete because they're not really blending in or listening to what the coaches are asking for. So that flexibility is very important. In that first week, there will be lots of steady state, lots of stop drills, standalone drills. And then after that, we'll start performing the identification and selection phase of the initial process, which we'll be doing events in different boat classes. So identification and evaluations will be done in the pairs, the straight 4, the Cox 4, the 8, and the quad. So those selections the identification process will happen. Evaluation process will happen. We'll take notes. We take daily notes, engagement. Every athlete is evaluated every day by the coaches working with them. And so that we can sit down with those athletes and say, hey, this is what you really need to work on to progress through the system or to better your chances at selection. Those that are selected into the Worlds group will be, there's a timeline this year. Like I said, it's shortened. We hope to have the group selected. We have a deadline or a date of that as July 3rd. Our submittal of all of the names that are qualified or selected to a nomination committee or nominating committee to the junior U19 high performance committee will be done July 10th, and they will have their days to review all of the process, review all of the data submitted, review anything used for evaluations to approve what the coaches submit. So the coaches will submit their process to me. I will review it. Either we go back and reevaluate some things or move forward with those nominations, and then we submit them to a committee to approve that final process so that there's some say from an outside view without having been biased by being there. The next group, the Canamex group, will be age eligible. We use that term age eligible in the sense that you have another year of eligibility. So you will be practicing, you will work with coaches that are there for selection purposes and identification. They will take you to a CanMX event, which is July 4th through July 10th. And that is in London, Ontario. So you will be representing the United States of America in what is a smaller Pan American Games for youth athletes. That's the best kind of correlation we can come up with. And then the other group of U18, the selection development athletes, will be selected, and you will go to Summer Nationals, which is, the date hasn't been set yet, but it should be in the middle of July as usual, and we will send the athletes there. You'll be representing the US team. So anybody that is age eligible, that is invited out to Chula Vista for selection camp, will represent the country in one way or another. If they make the world's team, terrific. If they don't, they'll be eligible for CanMX and selection development. And either one of those you will be part of the US contingent in that process. Some of the questions, that usually start out with are, how do you get invited? We send out, the invites are typically in waves, and we have, the first wave will be anybody with prior USA representation. So somebody from CanMX or prior, on the world's team from 2021, they would get an invite in the first phase or first wave of invites. Then the next group is ID camps. And the next group would be coaches recs, racing performance reviews, or if you are identified by a national team coach in some way or another. And that happens. Sometimes we see athletes at a regatta that fit the bill, and we will invite them on the spot. It's not typically done that way, but it is open to that process. Second, how is selection done? It's most likely going to be, that's a good question when you say everyone invited to selection camp or represent the country. The 2004s, thank you for writing that in there. The 2004 athletes that don't make worlds that will be the end of that phase, when everybody leaves to go do their other things like CanMX selection development or be nominated to the world's team. That will be the end of the summer with the US team. And then, you can go back to your clubs, go to another club, and we leave that open so that you can get some summer racing in still. So that's a good question. Thank you for putting that in. Selection is not typically done. I don't know many clubs that select the way the national team does. So it's something that you should definitely be aware of and pay attention to. And it does happen pretty fast. Unlike your home clubs where you have all year to evaluate athletes and seat race over courses of months, we don't have that luxury with the junior team. And we go through that first week to make sure that everybody is trying to get everybody to execute the stroke or understand the language that we're using as best as possible. Then we go through evaluation period. Again, it's evaluate in pairs, evaluate in straight fours, quads, the Cox 4 and the 8. And then those notes are taken. Those mixes will change you around in lineups. To get a pool of data on each athlete to be able to see if athlete A is helping a boat go fast, or if they just happen to be with fast athletes and that's why they're having good results. So we have that pretty long, thorough evaluative period that we can establish pools of athletes and the skills that they show. And then the other one we do some erg work. So fitness and capacity testing or evaluations are done. We've tried to keep them fairly standard over the course of the years. It's 500-meter pieces, 750-meter pieces, and 1250s over a course of 3 days. And some people ask, what specifically are we looking for? Really, that fitness is to help us identify talent that maybe we're not seeing really on the water. It just gives us another metric to gauge what we can work with. So, people ask all the time, what erg score do I need? Well, there's not really a specific number. I think every one of us would always say it would be really great on the boys' side for everyone to be sub 6, and now everyone on the girls' side to be sub 650. It would be wonderful, but it's not the case. It never is the case. And there are typically athletes that are well off those numbers that move boats very well because their programs at home may not erg test. So, we don't rely on the testing as much as possible. It's good identification to see your capacity. So that's an important note. If people will ask, like, do I need an erg score, a good erg score to get invited? There are definitely check boxes. Those things have been set up previously for years, decades even. If you go 6'10", you're going to get an invite. But if you are an incredibly poor rower, then it's going to be reflected very quickly. And if you aren't flexible to make changes, then it may be a pretty short summer for you, right? So it's very variable. We try to be as open and as honest as possible. Your racing results, we invite people that are very successful on the water that may not have skills or the fitness, the same ergs, but we are open as possible, and we try to allow everybody without these false or glass ceilings or false cutoffs. But in doing so can also create some, little bit of tension, just because everything is not the same. As for we've been talking about rowers a lot. Coxswains, you submit your coxswain your recordings, and we'll put out standards for that, what we're looking for. We typically like a recording for practice, but also racing recordings. We had with COVID last year, it was kind of interesting. We had lots of very successful videos produced, and people were coxing over videos that were from YouTube, just so that they had an opportunity, since their clubs weren't on the water. So there's a lot of ways to get project your ability as a coxswain, but that will be submitted through our new platform for engagement. We used to have a Google form that was updated. You could just update it as much as you want with any one of your scores, and we would collect that data, and we could actually see your improvement over time, which was great. And we could gauge some things off of that and give us a little more insight. We're going to be using this new platform, Game Time, that is supported by the USOPC and is used for talent identification in not only rowing, but many Olympic sports, and basketball, weightlifting, volleyball. There's tons of different sports that are on the platform, and that's what we're migrating to right now. So it's a platform where you can upload your videos, you can update. The information is the same as it was on the Google form, but it will have a, more common feeling for you. It kind of seems like a social network platform, which will engage. You'll register with the U19 system, and then all of the coaches will have a look at all of the people in the system, and we can filter through those metrics that have been submitted: height, weight, limb length, what your 2Ks are, scores, that kind of stuff, and your videos.
Casey,
yes.
For everybody listening, I put the link to Game Time in the chat. So that link is where you will submit yourself. You'll put all of your information in. It is also an account that you can continuously add to. If you have video of yourself, it'll contain all the video. There's all different kinds of formats that you can put your video in. but yeah, you could put your audio in for Coxswain. You can put all the stuff about you. As you improve your erg times, you can put those in there as well. So that link is in the chat room right now.
Awesome. So one of the other things I wanted to address in our systems like Canamex and selection development, when you go off on your trip and you go away to those regattas, transportation, like once you leave that regatta, getting to California is something that is managed by the athletes and their families, and getting home from those to Canamex and selection development are also managed by the families. I say that separately because the World's team will get tickets through some sponsor partner that we have, and then we will have return flights, but most families make adjustments to those return flights because we'll have a round trip ticket from selection camp to Worlds and back, and then it will be up to the families to modify that flight if they care to do so. But the other two, Canamex and selection development, they are certainly a more, fly you from London, Ontario back to, say, Detroit, if that's where you're from. So, and that will be up to you, the family. Next on the list, we have, through the whole system, we created a pretty broad platform, hoping that people would be engaged in it and be coached by the coaches that we are saying we want to send the message that we're looking for. And that system was the ODP system for younger athletes. ODP was something that only existed a few years ago and was only utilized by the soccer federation in America, until we added and got approved to the program. And that was, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 2019 was the first year we had ODP recognition. So the Olympic Development Program, which is a regional program, and it has to have regional representation, and we have 6 regions for athletic endeavor in the sport of rowing. ODP system was established so that you could engage in our American development model, or what is more noted as long-term athlete development, and that you could hear the language and understand the abilities, rowing terminology, the actual execution that the national team is looking for, so that we are engaging in the younger athletes, setting them down in the pipeline so that you can be more successful in the U19 system. Okay, and then it can also go beyond that, the U19 system. You can go to the U23 system as well, and hopefully, if you want to represent the country with the senior national team, that too. But we're trying to create a foundation of a framework that gives you an awesomely strong foundation to be successful in the sport of rowing. So below the selection camp group would be the ODP HP group. And that group is typically made up of athletes that aren't quite selection camp effectiveness on the water yet, or have the capacity to be there yet. And so U18 and U19 athletes, but U18 athletes would be, the mindset would be, you haven't really, set yourself down. We don't want to put you in a system that is a little bit quicker, evaluated, challenged from day one every day, to make sure that we want to make sure that you have an environment that allows you to learn and progress, fill in some gaps that you may have, and then go back to your home program and then be more successful, ready to go in a more hands-on, rudimentary environment. And then we also provide in this ODP HP a group for U19 athletes that aren't quite there, but may, like I would say historically, we've had athletes that have checked all the check boxes and that we've invited to selection camp because there has been no other outlet for them. And then we recognized several years ago that it's really not conducive for those U19 athletes to go to camp that clearly aren't going to make it. But a lot of people want to be invited to selection camp. They check boxes. But what we wanted to do is create an environment that allowed people that we saw that may represent the U.S. national team at the U23 or the senior level, but don't quite have it. There was this void, a gap in the system that didn't allow for us to help those athletes along. So this ODP U19 fills that void, gives you a strong structure. At this ODP HP camp, there are incredible coaches. Last year, Chris, you brought in Chris Korzanowski, and I mean, I don't even remember all the names, but didn't you bring in Steve Gladstone as well, right? Do you have a list of those names? Can you
We had 74 coaches. We had 24 college coaches. We had 6 Ivy Leagues had coaches there. Steve Gladstone, of course, was there. Chris Korzanowski was there. We had international coaches there. It was a long list.
And a lot of that, I mean, it's a great environment. It truly is a great environment that was being missed, not only in the U.S., but lots of other countries have that athletes that definitely have the frame, have the capacity, but really maybe haven't been experienced in rowing for long enough. But it really just kept them engaged, and we could help them along and move them up the pipe. Beyond that, and that group will be competing at summer nationals as well. So that will be, they'll get a racing experience, but it definitely will not be spent seat racing or evaluating for selection. It will be a development environment to make sure that you are getting very hands-on, the speed at which you need to learn so that you can move on in a place that is not filled with people that are certainly ready to go. So it's an environment that has been incredibly successful. We've had plenty of kids come through, and we're seeing positive results in the selection team results from that part of the ODP system. The next in the system is the ODP, so just blanket ODP system for boys and girls. The boys and girls will be separate this year. They will be in different locations. All the girls will be in one location. All the boys will be in one location or another location. And those groups will be established by regions as it has in the past. And we will have invites out for that as well. Pretty early on, we will try to identify with coaches who will be invited to those groups. Again, it's a learning environment. There is racing. There, is a race put on that is essentially between these younger U17 All-Stars. It's called the Summer Cup, and it's the only people competing there will be the people that are invited to ODP. So it won't be summer nationals racing 3 or 4 times. You'll be racing many times against the other U17 All-Stars, and that will be in Sarasota in mid-July. So that's a big part of the system. ODP, like Chris said, 74 different coaches speaking the language that the national team is wanting your athletes, or you, the athlete, to hear, making sure that you are understanding what is required in the future, but also giving you the tools to put in your toolbox. I know that's a lame saying, but it's absolutely true. Learning how to do the different boat classes, learning how to row the different boat classes, increasing your rowing IQ, not just pounding out the summer and getting beat up and going racing. I understand a lot of people want to do that, but there's so much more that needs to be done and that's what ODP provides. You do get a racing experience, but it certainly is after some very intensive learning, educational, even weightlifting, stretching, nutrition and diet, mental acuity and awareness and mental health. There's lots of things that get covered. Lots of things that get covered in ODP that you're not going to get elsewhere, for sure. Chris, do you have anything further about ODP?
No, I mean, it was a great experience. It was a month, and it's also a precursor to college. We stayed at a college. We had a lot of college coaches to give. So there was a lot of recruiting talk of, how to do it. 24 coaches there, plus another 6 Ivy Leagues. Having Mike Gennaro, who's been at every level, was great to have around. And we had, I think 9 Olympians that were there, or nine rowers with former world championship experience. At ODP, we also had a whole coxswain program where we had a Yale coxswain that worked with the coxswains every day. The coxswains rotated through all the coaches to get a variety of perspectives. So we did a lot. We talked a lot about coxswain. And as Casey was mentioning, we had nutrition with the U.S. national team dietitian talking about nutrition and wellness. We had how to lift correctly. We had a U.S. weightlifting coach that was there and instructed in weightlifting. We had how to use the RP3 and how to work on aspects of your stroke like length and the curves. That surprisingly everybody loved. We did a little coastal rowing, which I think actually we have a famous coastal rower on this talk right now. As a matter of fact, I think we might have the rower of the year for coastal. And the other thing to note about is we don't row 8s. The camp is designed that you row singles, doubles, pairs, straight 4s, and quads. If the water is bad, we'll row 8s if we have to, but the goal is not to row 8s, just to build skills that the people we're racing against internationally have and we don't have. Jedin has a question, Casey, if you don't mind, I'll answer it. ODP and HP, are they considered ID camps? They are, in the sense that last summer we got to see 384 of you. And those notes were kept and passed on to, Eric and Caitlin. We talked about this before we came on the call. We will go back and talk to all the 74 coaches and ask them who stood out and who was, give them names and give feedback on all of you. We also have video of a lot of you that did ODP and HP, and that will be helpful. But don't mistake, ODP was still in July, and hopefully you have progressed since, and it will continue to progress throughout the winter. So we'll get to see a lot more of you, we hope. And Casey, you did explain the differences between the ID camp, that's a 1-day camp that you stop in, see coaches, and then the invite only 3 to 4 day camp.
I was going to get to that because there's a good question.
Okay, sorry, you go ahead.
So how do you qualify or participate in an ID camp? ID camps are open to anybody in the system, and those ID camps are posted. The ones that have been confirmed are posted on the U.S. Rowing Juniors website, like in the U19 area, youth area. And we don't require anybody to go to an ID camp. We'd be remiss if we did. There's family things are going to come up. Money is an issue. There's all kinds of considerations that we try to allow for. In saying that, though, it is very good to go to an ID camp. Having eyes on an athlete is way better than sending a video, because inevitably the video is going to be something like we're not sure we want to see, or you're rowing at a 18 stroke rate, not race cadence, whatever it is. There's going to be something that's not perfect. Mike, could you mute your mic there? So we have 2 different things. We have ID camps, which are those are open to everyone, and then we have winter HP camps, which we haven't done in a while because of COVID, but we are going to start them up again because of the shortened selection period. And we want to make sure that we get some eyes on early, let the kids row together early. Those camps will be limited to a certain amount of people. typically it's 24 boys and 24 girls. We have a West Coast and an East Coast camp, try to keep the costs down so you're not flying from one coast to another. Those will be in January. Those aren't the end all be all. There are plenty of people that have made boats at the world's level, Canamex level and selection development, which used to be HP, that were not invited to those camps. There are people that make tremendous changes throughout the spring and they get identified late, and it's totally fine. There should be no added stress that you don't get invited to one of those camps. Keep in touch, keep your program updated, and also the game time information updated. And we see that. We see it when somebody makes an update to their account. It kind of gives us, identifies it, sends us an alert. We go on and we look at that information. But making sure that if you can get to an ID camp, please do. If you can't, please communicate with one of the coaches so that we know, there is a desire, but who knows? You have an SAT that weekend, family outing, whatever it is. Family is important. We don't want you to miss family to make an ID camp. And we certainly aren't going to say fly to California if you live in Boston to make an ID camp if it's the only one available for you. But again, it does help to be at those camps. And what we do, the coaches, the two lead coaches, Caitlin, Eric, and myself, have been discussing new ID camp procedures instead of doing a rate cap 2K, which we've done in the past. We're thinking about making a change. And once we have that change, we will go through it and we'll announce it so that people can be prepared and so that they can execute some of that work before they get there, so it's not a shock to the system. I think I covered the things that you were talking about, Chris, and also about having to participate. Question of how many coxswains are typically invited. We've been inviting around 6 coxswains per gender to camp, so that there will be 2 that go to Worlds, there will be 1 that goes to Canamex, and 2 that go to select Summer Nationals or Selection Development. And then, so out of those 6, 5 will go to something if they are age eligible. So, that Canamex, you have to be 2005, same with Selection Development this coming year. So we go through and we're trying, not just selecting masses of coxswains to be there. Coxswains, typically you've got to be on the ball as soon as you arrive. I think coxswains there have been a few coxswains have made some mistakes while they've been there, and they've, obviously corrected them and gone on to Worlds. But if there are, repetitive mistakes, that's like showing up and, saying you do a 6:48 2K for a female and you end up going 7:48 at every evaluation, or you're pacing that way. It's not very good. And to further the question about if you go to an ID camp and does it count, or an ODP camp, does it count as ID? Clearly, like Chris said, we have contact, we have notes, but again, keeping it updated is very key, right? It's very important to be able to notify us, to be able to see you again, see the changes you've made, have you, that we have athlete meetings to go over things that may or may not, be like your sticking points or your lacking of technical ability. We want to make sure that we've communicated those to you and that we see that you have made an attempt to make those changes. Again, that's the flexibility and quality of athletes that we're looking for, that are able to make some changes.
In conjunction with that, I think everybody needs to understand that there are certain restrictions that we have. For instance, in Chula Vista, we only get 144 beds. Okay, it's the limitation of the camp. We get 72 per gender, period. And so when people, it's not just, we just don't have an open-ended number of people that we can invite, nor do we have the time to go through many more. Same thing, each of the ODP camps is 150. That's 30 athletes per region. So there's 6 regions. So we can get up to 180, but we also fit HP in there for kids who have aged out and don't get invitations to selection. We have an HP for you to keep you in the pipeline for U23. So we're trying to find ways to continue development from the youngest ages all the way through the system. This year at the Olympics, we had 4 people who were cut from the junior team that never made the junior team, but they stuck with it and they became Olympians. So our goal is to line up the pipelines from U19 through U23 all the way to the senior team and keep everybody we can that wants to be engaged. But we don't always have the space that we would like to have. There's 66,000 juniors that are registered U.S. rowing members, and we have about 500 beds. So there's 66,000. I mean, it just, we do the best we can to get everybody that we, and your skill is self-selecting. You will give us the information we need on who we choose to bring at each level.
Yeah, I see that there are some questions about graduation. I did speak to one parent about that. I see it right here in the notes. I say this, and I know this response is one of those ones that probably is like, somebody dragging their fingernails down a chalkboard, if you remember what a chalkboard was. Going back, leaving selection camp to go to a graduation doesn't hurt the chances of the athlete, as in, we are not going to say, well, you left camp, so you're demoted. But it is a day of flight. It is a day of graduation and a flight back. So those things, what you miss are opportunities to improve. And what the athlete will do is miss those opportunities to improve, which will in turn
give me a ride. I'm sorry.
Give them or take away more ability for improvement. So it's not that it hurts their chances directly. It just is in like a byproduct of missing evaluations, interactions with the coach. That's where it hurts. And that will be, those things can be scheduled to a point. I'm not saying that we can make there are commitments that have to be made. And if you say, consider them sacrifices, that's one way to look at it as well. If you have to sacrifice something, then that's a decision that will have to be made between the athlete and the family for that kind of thing. There's a question: if no prior U.S. representation, completing the link and sending videos is the next way to be considered for selection camp. ID camps, like we said, ID camps is a good way. Getting your information out, having a coach approve and verify the information that we've been provided will be a process. I know last year, the process is ongoing. So last year I had a discussion with the lead coach on the men's side, Eric Gerke. We talked about okay, well, if you're inviting athlete A from a team, engage with the coach to see if there are any additional athletes that may or may not have submitted information. And in February, I think it was February, Eric had communicated with the coach and was given a very direct answer that athlete A was the fastest athlete on their team. Well, when April came around, an athlete had improved. So we reached back out to that team, and that coach said, correct, I have an athlete now that is faster than the other athlete that you invited. So that invite was extended, and it was extended rather late, but it was because that's when we found the information. So the sooner you can get the information to us, the better. Certainly the better chances of getting an invite. Like Chris said, we have 72 beds per gender at Chula Vista. And that puts a limit on how many people we can have. So
Casey, Caitlin and Eric, would you put your your US rowing emails in the chat. If Caitlin, if you have questions or updates that you think are very important or pertinent, for the female athletes, send them to Caitlin, Coach Caitlin. And if you're one of the guys, would you send it to Coach Eric, please? So as the winter goes on and you progress, last year over 1,400 people applied for the system. And so it's a lot of information to juggle. So Eric, would you put your US rowing, Coach Eric, would you put your US rowing one in there? Please do not write to Coach Gerke at his Gmail address. Please write to Coach Gerke at his US rowing. I know it seems silly now, but Safe Sport requires that in the capacity as US rowing coaches, that you are communicating with them officially through the usrowing.org emails. So gender specific, if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have updates, the lead coaches are Coach Caitlin and Coach Eric.
There's a question in here. Will Florida be having an ID camp? Yes, we will. We're just waiting on verification before we publish it.
Another thing I wanted to say to everybody is we are revamping last year we had an entire website filled out for ODP. We are actually expanding that to contain information for all the layers of the U19 system. And so that will be live by January 1. It will also have very specific information, location, coaching staff, everything that we can get on there. So be patient for that, please. It's quite extensive. It still has all the information currently about our last summer's camp. So you'll get an idea of all the stuff that's on there, but that will be changing and be probably 3 times the amount of information once we get selection. So just so we're all clear also, selection camp contains 3 layers of the team. U19 that goes to Worlds, Canamex, which is age eligible kids for the following year that goes to London, Ontario, and selection development. And those kids will go to Summer Nationals and compete as the red, white, and blue. ODP camp is split into 2 this year, 3 actually. The boys ODP will be in Chattanooga, hosted by McCallie and Baylor. The girls ODP will be in Sarasota, and they will row at Benderson every day. And the HP will be in Jacksonville. HP will be boys and girls. And also we'll have the athletes that are U21 that don't make the U23 team, and anybody that's 18 or 19 that didn't get, obviously the 19-year-olds wouldn't get invited, but we don't want to lose great athletes. So we will have great coaches there to help you develop in the pipeline in case you do want to make U19 or the U23 team in following years. So those are the locations. We will take about 150 at each of the boys ODPs. We'll take 144 at selection, and that's it. We don't have room for anybody else. And for HP, I think, what did we say, Casey? 92 total for U23, U21, and 18 and 19-year-olds. And U17, if you are exceptional and you just don't get that invite, we still want to work with you so that we see you again next year. And so, but the seats, I'll just say it one more time. We had over 1,400 in our first year. We had over 1,400 applicants. And a lot of people found out late. So with 66,000 juniors, do the math, right? So those emails that the coaches have put in there are important to reach out and get the information that you need. If you're good enough and you want to do this, then we're waiting for you.
There's a question, are there specific ID camps for coxswains? No, they will go to the same ID camps as the athletes, or the rowers, sorry. As the rowers.
Casey, for coxswains, I might suggest that they send their tapes to Caitlin and Eric so that the coaches, it's not as easy to get, to put you're not going to be putting numbers in on game time, right? So, and we need to make sure that game time can handle the audio
something we'll
files.
address with game time so that we have one database or bucket for information.
And the other thing that's been helpful in the past is the YouTube. When you upload your cams to YouTube and stuff and send us the link, we collect all the Cox and stuff like that as well. So that's a very helpful tool for us. The The other thing I should say is we were supposed to have $1,000 limit, or I'm sorry, 1,000 person limit tonight. Google didn't, or Zoom didn't update our file here. So it locked out at 100. So my phone's been going off. So there's probably 3 times as many people that wanted to be on here that are not. We recorded this. It will be posted on the US Rowing, the U19 page. If you know anybody, your coaches, your fellow athletes in your club, your parents, this recording will be available so that you didn't miss anything. So you can tell anybody you need to. Let's see here, Dana, I see something. It only accepts YouTube and Huddle. There should be 4 different platforms. The Google Drive you're talking about, in Game Time, there are 4 different platforms to put in video. So on the link, Dana, that I put up earlier, if you go back to the chat, I put in a link where you would put in you would register at Game Time. You should be able to put a variety of different kinds of files for video in there. I hope that helps, Dana.
The two other questions I see about invites going out. Invites will start rolling out in a wave or a phase process in December, starting again with the athletes that have participated in the US system. Then, like Selection Camp or Canamex Selection Development, then through ODP, ID camps, and coaches' recommendations and athlete identification from other national team coaches. It will be a rolling process, and invites, we sent out invites the Sunday before we arrived in California. Those people, there are people that are identified as late as youth nationals. So it's, definitely not something that we end or we're saying we cut off and there's no chance. So improvement in skills can be shown all the way to the end to receive an invite. Refusing an invite doesn't, that's another question. Refusing an invite does not negate any further chance from being part of the system. But, it helps being in the system so that you can learn what we're looking for. ID camp registrations, we are working on getting everything set up in Regatta Central. Eric, I know we talked about getting that done. I don't know how far we are with that, but it should be by mid-December or the convention, the US Rowing Convention, those things should be live.
For what it's worth, Zoom just contacted me to let me know that they're now going to upgrade our system. So for the next 8 minutes, we can have 300 more people join us. #/sarcasm. Any other questions? When will ID camp registration open? Janet, that's a great question. Coach Eric and Coach Caitlin are going to be putting in the, we're going to do that on Regatta Central, correct? So everybody on right now, Regatta Central will be where you will find the ID camp registrations for the list of ID camps that I said. I put a link in there as well for ID camps. It's also on the US Rowing. There's a whole, you just go to usrowing.org and there under national teams, you'll see U19 ID camps. Casey, did you see the question earlier about when can they start having their coaches send recommendations to you? That was earlier on.
They can send them at any time. The other question is, is Game Time the only place you should be updating your information? Yes, that will be the one place that we are looking for information on the athletes. You can also, sending information in is not a bad idea, but believe me, you'll want to be in Game Time versus somebody's email. I'm not trying to make excuses for any of the staff, but we receive thousands of emails. I receive 1,000 emails a day. If you want to be noticed, we go to that platform, and there's not a specific search we can do in our mail that we're always going to find you if we're looking back through our mail. So please use Game Time if you absolutely want to be identified.
But there are specific searches we can do at game time for the spreadsheets. So that's what we're going to rely on to sort you guys by your ERG scores or sort you by your height. You know, those are the things we're going to be sorting through. So you want to be in game time.
If an athlete doesn't get an early invite, will you all communicate with him to stay in touch? Yeah, absolutely. And we say it time and time again, please keep us updated. Now you have this game time tool. It's a lot more luxurious than a Google form. So it will enable us to have good interaction and see things. Like I said, we get an update whenever somebody does update their information.
Okay, I'm gonna be like,
It's a good system to use, and we will stay in touch, and hopefully things change. I mean, again, like Chris said, we have 144 seats or beds, so not everybody's going to get invite, but we will certainly do our best to let people know where they stand. And then the winter system works. Cannot one attend both the normal ID camp and the January HP camp? If you get invited to the January HP camps, what we ask is, so for a good example, we had an athlete in 2016, 17, 18. There was a phenomenal athlete, won a bunch of medals at the junior system, clearly had no need to go to any ID camps, but willingly went to ID camps and actively helped recruit athletes and identify athletes in the junior system. So if you were invited to the winter HP camp, I would still suggest, if you can go to an ID camp, do so, because it helps. If you are on the junior team already, it helps excite younger athletes. They like to see, I mean, some kids have brought their world's medals to ID camps before to show other kids. It will, when you're part of the system, you will start to feel engaged and want to engage others in the thing that you love. And it is exciting to see those kids. I mean, Chris has flown junior athletes around like Clark Dean, to meet other kids, and it's great. And that kind of participation, even though you've been identified, you don't need to do it. It's one of those things that you're promoting your own self-interest and you increasing the chances of your greater success if you do participate in both. The HP camp, I wouldn't say is relatively low, especially if your talent is great, the videos are awesome, your coach's recommendation is high. All of those things play into it. If you're a coxswain, then your audio is terrific. There's nothing that's going to stand in the way of your selection or invite if you're submitting everything. If you are not submitting anything, we can't identify people we don't know about. I say that a lot. So, again, it's going to be the people that we feel are meeting the needs that we have that will be invited to those, so that we can get a jump on, getting teams together. When we did the winter HP camps before, like I said, it's not the end all be all. The boats were not selected there. It may give us a little insight out of 24 boy athletes and 24 girls that these two people really work well together. We may want to put them in a boat together, and then they might be two people in the 8. Who knows? I'm using that as an example. But then we get there and we think those two people are significant, and they're not. They don't make it both. So, there are no hard yeses, and they're, in the selection world, there just aren't. We are going to select the fastest combination of athletes for each of the boat classes, period.
It's also more of a reason to go to the ID camp, because if you're relatively unknown, come and meet us, meet the coaches, meet everybody, Let us see what you're about. And, if you're a coxswain, what kind of leadership skills do you have in the room? What kind of respect do you command? How do you function? Those are important things for the coxswains, especially coming out of COVID and you don't have a lot of tapes, racing tapes. Meet us in person. I think that's Coach Eric put in there, come to regattas, meet the coaching staff. It's important to have that one-on-one. We have about 1 minute left. We have time for a few more questions if you have them. Otherwise, we want to be, aware of your time, not keep you too long. But I just saw one come through.
January 14th through January 17th will be our winter HP camps.
One on each coast. Chula Vista for the West Coast and Benderson, Sarasota for the East Coast. Hannah, you got where they were, right? Yeah, you did. Okay.
In junior rowing at the world, well, actually in America and the world, there are no lightweights. There are plenty of people that would be considered lightweights that go to worlds, but there are only open weight events at the Junior World Championships. And
I'll say, there was a great Cox 4 that got a silver medal with a bow and a stroke seat that were lightweight.
Coached by some really great coach.
Coached by a really awesome coach, but he's modest, so he wouldn't say that.
Oh, I know.
All right.
Yes,
well, thank you, everybody. Again,
camp.
I'm sorry. What's
There's
that?
another question about Florida ID camps. Yes. Yes, it hasn't been finalized or the contract, so it'll be posted when it's finalized.
If anybody's feeling really crazy, and I know Casey, you won't say this, but there is a camp in Sarasota happening over Thanksgiving week. If you wanted to go down there and be seen by the head coach of the junior national team, I know that he's throwing a little soiree together on the water down there. Casey, if you want, if people have nothing to do and they want to go, why not? You can.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be coached by Coach Caitlin, lead coach here, a Canamex coach, Abby Young, Rick Brown will be there, and Jesse Folia, who is the head men's coach at the, for the U23 system. He'll be coaching as well. All of those coaches will be there, and it's a camp to get some small boats. It'll be in singles and pairs, and it's any skill level. So
where can they find, Casey, where can they find the link to register if they choose to go?
It is a Sarasota crew camp, not a U.S. rowing camp. So it's on sarasotacrew.org under our camps, join us camps location.
Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Again, for those of you who came late, this is being recorded. It will be put on the U.S. Rowing website. We will have 2 more. And as we move further along, we'll have more information, more specific information. We look forward to seeing you all.